Hello YouTube. Today I will present one more video about a very interesting and unusual Soviet and Russian scientist, Boris Ustinovich Rodionov, who lived between the years of 1939-2021, and this was a major physicist of the Soviet period. It is said that he merged science, faith, religion, corporeal and disembodied worlds, illuminated with his knowledge, natural essence, charisma, and opened the way for consciousness to freedom of thought. Among the scientific achievements of the great physicist Rodionov is the original concept of dark matter from filamentous atoms. Doctor of Physical and Mathematical Sciences, Professor of the Department of Micro and Cosmophysics of the Moscow State Engineering Physics Institute, specialist in the field of registration of elementary particles. He was the organizer of the two Moscow conferences on the Tunguska phenomenon, and in 2003 he led an international scientific expedition to the epicenter of this event. And he was an active member of the Moscow team of researchers of the Tunguska phenomenon. In the mid-2010s, Boris Ustinovich Rodionov became widely known for his statements that contradict the modern scientific picture of the world. And I would say good for him. In particular, he participated in a film about Nikola Tesla, in which he claimed that the Tunguska meteorite was not a meteorite at all, but one of Tesla's experiments. What I will cover today is not Nikola Tesla. We will do it later, and Rodionov's contributions. What I do want to talk about is the warnings that Rodionov issued about future events. Let me start with the asteroid. Here is the Russian information. In 2004, astronomers discovered a huge asteroid heading towards Earth. They called it Apophis, after the demon, the spirit of evil and destruction, which in Egyptian mythology seeks to plunge the world into eternal darkness. In recent years, Apophis has been hiding from us behind the solar disk, and only at the very end in 2010 it was again in the field of view of ground-based telescopes. Astronomers managed not only to photograph it but also to clarify the direction of flight. According to calculations, this iron hammer, because Apophis consists of iron and iridium, it will fly almost very close to the Earth, at a distance closer than that at which most of our artificial geostationary satellites are now located. It will be in 2029. On an unlucky day, on Friday, April 13, just the day after the celebration of the 68th anniversary of the space age. After flying past and changing its trajectory under the influence of Earth gravity, the asteroid will make a circle and return to our planet in 2036. Calculations by American astrophysicists show that this time Apophis will pass even closer to the Earth's surface, touching the upper layers of the atmosphere. Meanwhile, Russian scientists suggest that in the 17 years between the two visits, the asteroid's flight path may change slightly due to weak interaction with other bodies far from it. And then, as a catastrophic collision, the outcome is likely for our planet. At that time, the head of the Russian space agency Roscosmos, Anatoly Perminov, made a statement that Russia might send an automatic device or apparatus to Apophis to push it off the trajectory. According to Perminov, certain work in this direction is underway. Several projects have already been received or started. Plans are also being made to protect the Earthlings from disaster here on Earth. Well, Doctor of Physical and Mathematical Sciences, Professor of the Moscow University of Engineering and Physics, Boris Rodionov, came up with the design of giant balloons, a kind of flying arcs in which millions of people can fit. According to him, air cities above the Earth could not only ensure humanity from extinction due to natural disasters, but would also become a prototype of settlements on planets with unfavorable habitat. Russian media had a chance to meet with the scientist on the eve of the meeting of the Presidium of Russian Academy of Natural Sciences, at which he was supposed to present for discussion his draft Russian Academy of Natural Sciences program on global security. So here's some questions and answers. Boris Ustinovich, as I understand it, you propose to build air cities to protect all of us from the fall of an asteroid. Is this your program? No, of course not. In fact, there are more threats to humanity. Here we live and think that the existence of the human race is infinite, but we live on the edge of a precipice, and at any moment this edge can collapse. In my program, I justified 10 such threats and suggested ways to minimize them. And how serious are these threats? The probability of them can be calculated, of course. We take statistics, for example, cases of flu epidemics. We make a graph along the time axis and the axis of the number of deaths. Then we look at when the death curve can cross the point 6 billion people, the number of the entire population of the planet. Thus, we can extrapolate the mathematical dependence into the future and calculate the probability of a global catastrophe. The longer the time axis, the more likely a catastrophe would be. Then we superimpose the curves of other global threats on the same graph, look at where these curves can coincide, and multiply the probability of the death of all mankind. In general, I came to this conclusion. This probability is so great that a special program is needed to preserve humanity from disasters. Why exactly did you count 10 threats? Of course, there are more of them, but I have researched so much to date. I was already relying on the available scientific material and the statistics of catastrophes accumulated over the past 100 years. Unfortunately, they began to study this phenomena seriously only 100 years ago. If global threats are built according to the degree of probability, then the pandemic claims the first place. Again, if global threats are built according to the degree of probability, then the pandemic claims the first place. I will not give my calculations and statistical calculations here. I think they are not interesting to your reader. I will only say that relatively recently, in the years 1918-1919, in just 18 months around the world, approximately 50 to 100 million people, or 2.7 to 5.3% of the world's population, died from Spanish flu. In total, about 550 million people were infected. That is 30% of the then population of the planet. Is it really that much? I've never heard of it. And they usually don't talk about this at school. Everyone knows about the victims of the First World War, but they have already forgotten about the fact that in the last month of the war, there was a worldwide catastrophe that claimed more human lives than this bloodiest war by that time. And what is Spanish flu? This is just one of the varieties of the common flu that most of us have been sick with. There are different forms of influenza. The virus mutates quickly, and even modern medicine cannot always defeat it in time. Remember how long you have been looking for a vaccine against avian flu. It is almost impossible to predict the behavior of viruses that modify themselves, and it is very difficult to detect them in a sleeping state. They can spread among all mankind and then, under the influence of some external factor, wake up at once, and that's it, the end. It turns out that we really all walk under God. It is not enough to rely on the mercy of God. We must do something ourselves. Many of the threats I have researched directly depend on human behavior. Now you will be surprised. The second most likely catastrophe that threatens us is mental illness. I also didn't believe it at first, but on my chart, they were the ones who took the second position. There is such dynamic here. Let me write you a series of numbers, rounding. This is the percentage of the mentally ill from the total number of people. Year 1900, 0.1%, 1910, 1.5%, 1920, 10%, 1930, 16%. In the 1930s, the epidemic hit Germany the hardest. Hitler, himself apparently unhealthy in this regard, ordered simply to destroy the mentally ill people, who then overflowed the hospitals. About the same thing happened to us in the Soviet Union after the perestroika. For example, in the Primorsky Krai, or Russian Maritime Province, the number of mental patients tripled in just a year or two, and then the statistics stopped being published. No one knows how to deal with such epidemics. Psychiatrists cannot cure one person, but there are masses of people here, and mental abnormalities spread like an infection exponentially. The third threat merges with the second. It's global suicide. Humanity is losing the instinct of self-preservation. People are drawn to suicidal things, to narcotic intoxication. Nowadays, more and more sophisticated drugs are being created, and these are not only physical drugs, but also virtual computer tools that affect the psyche in a special way and lead away from real life. Humanity has many ways to commit suicide. One nuclear button is worth something, right? The psyche of people is thinning, while the toys in their hands are becoming more dangerous. The fourth most likely threat is a solar flare. The protuberances of our star extend for millions of kilometers. Fortunately, these bursts of plasma fly out perpendicular to the plane of the Earth, ecliptic. But about once every 30,000 years, such an outbreak dramatically changes the climatic conditions, which leads to the mass death of the living. The same danger is represented by a sharp change in the geomagnetic field, due to which, among other things, a worldwide earthquake may occur. So this is the sixth threat. I have heard that geophysicists have learned to predict earthquakes and warn about them. What's the use? Everyone knows that 8 of the 10 largest megacities of the world, Tokyo, Mexico City, New York, Mumbai, New Delhi, Shanghai, Calcutta, and Jakarta, are located on geological faults, that is, in dangerous zones. 161 million people live there. They build seismically stable buildings for themselves, but they are still shaking and people are dying. Over the past 40 years, more than a dozen powerful earthquakes have occurred on Earth. But these are local disasters. There cannot be a worldwide earthquake, maybe. The globe is an absolutely unexplored object. It is even less studied than the stars. Astrophysicists know a lot about celestial bodies, for example, what they consist of. They are already able to predict the processes inside stars. And what is under the crust of our planet is unknown. They drill, scan with radio waves, but to a shallow depth. We're just guessing, and the Earth behaves like a skittish horse. You don't know what it will do. By the way, we were able to predict the current earthquake in Japan, but still, they made a mistake in the strength of the shocks. They thought that would be weaker. We're speaking about the years 2011, and this is the period that he was basically interviewed, Professor Rodionov. Let me get back to his statements. Earthquakes are an unavoidable evil, and we have long been reconciled to it. Many simply displace the memory of them from their conscience. Last year, there was an earthquake in Haiti. More than 300,000 people died. Who remembers it now? But on TV, scary pictures did not come off the screen. And that earthquake in 2004, because of which the tsunami hit Thailand and killed about 10,000 people. After all, they also forgot it. So it will be with the current tragedy in Japan. What is inevitable is pushed out of our consciousness. Earthquakes are associated with the seventh threat, the flood. We all know that 71% of the surface of our planet is covered with water, that we live as if on a piece of land. But many do not even realize that there is water under this patch of land. According to experts, the composition of the Earth's mantle contains 10 to 15 times more water than in the world ocean. At any moment, as a result of some processes inside the Earth, an additional amount of water can be released and fill the entire land. Yes, I didn't know about the water inside the Earth. Is there really so much of it? But I'll give you a comparative example. Now, due to global warming, the ice massives of Antarctica and Greenland have begun to melt, and there are already fears that part of Europe will sink to the bottom, Britain will disappear, and so on. Impressive? But the water in this ice is only 23 million cubic kilometers. And now compare with the unaccounted water in the Earth's mantle, 200 billion cubic kilometers. Millions and billions. Do you feel the difference? Imagine if this water, after the Earth cataclysms, suddenly enters the atmosphere and falls as rain. At the same time, as a result of volcanic eruptions, a huge amount of dust can get into the atmosphere, which will block the sun from us. As a result, a volcanic winter will also begin. Those people who are lucky enough to escape from the flood on a few pieces of land will simply die of hunger. The earth will freeze, nothing will grow on it. And what kind of land will it be? Rocky mountain peaks. The fertile lands that are in the lowlands will flood, first of all. Yes, you have painted a sad picture. If not one thing, then another. More precisely, one thing pulls the other. As it was recently in Japan, the earthquake generated a tsunami, and then the tsunami hit the nuclear power plant, disabling diesel generators on the shore. When the accident at the nuclear power plant began, these generators could not give current to the electric pumps that should pump liquid to cool the reactor. As a result, there were emissions of radiation. The contamination of the territory began. There is a saying, one trouble goes, another leads. For example, the asteroid impact on Earth can cause a worldwide earthquake, flood, and volcanic winter. Do you mean Apophis? As far as I know, its size is not that big, no more than half a kilometer across. But it is made of iron and weighs almost 30 million tons. Imagine the kinetic energy. Have you heard about the new weapon of the Americans, rods from God? It translates as arrows of God. The weapon is very simple. A tungsten rod with a diameter of 30 centimeters. No dynamite, just a metal rod. It is assumed that such arrows will be dropped to Earth from satellites, and their kinetic energy gained during the fall will be enough to destroy underground bunkers. Reinforced concrete will evaporate from such a blow. And now mentally replace this arrow with a metal block of 3/10 of millions of tons, flying at a speed of 30 kilometers per second. Yes, it will break through the Earth's crust and stir up magma, initiating earthquakes all over the Earth. The thickness of the crust is small. It's only about 10 to 30 kilometers. Scientists say that according to calculations, Apophis in 2036 should fly close to the Earth without hitting the surface. Who knows? Suppose we get lucky, and then this Apophis, the demon of destruction, is not going anywhere. It will appear for the first time in 2029 and fly close to us, then make a circle and return. It will fly close, touching the atmosphere. And a dozen years later, the same movement in a spiral. The Earth attracts it to itself. So we need to prepare for the impact. Is that why you propose to build air cities? Including, although the task is broader, that's the reason. Giant air shelters may seem fantastic, but as an engineer, I assure you, it's all real within our technical capabilities. Giant air shelters, a balloon in the form of a flattened spheroid filled with helium. I have carried out calculations of the pressure distribution over the areas. The total surface area should be 6 square kilometers, the volume 16 cubic kilometers. 10 floors will be able to accommodate 10 million people in a fairly comfortable conditions. That is, one person will have 25 square meters, not counting the total area where you can place farms with animals, gardens, reservoirs, technical rooms. In the center of the spheroid is a special place with a control point and a power plant. Energy can also be obtained from solar panels, since the surface of the spheroid is huge, and from wind generators located around the perimeters. These turntables can produce 10 gigawatts or more. In addition, it is possible to use the energy of ocean tides, currents, the heat of volcanoes, through a cable lower to the ground. Electricity will be needed mainly for the heating residential premises, because for the safety reasons, the giant air shelters will sometimes have to be raised above the cloud cover, 8 kilometers, and there the temperature is minus 30 to 40 degrees. The carrying capacity of such a balloon near the ground about 16 million tons, above the clouds from 8 to 5 million tons. Man has never built anything like this. Is it really possible? I am telling you, there are technologies for this. A skyscraper with a height of almost a kilometer, 819 meters, has been built in Dubai and in France, and 3-kilometer bridge with a height of 343 meters was built between the hills. The Eiffel Tower can almost fit under it. Its construction was completed in 2004, but since then the technology has stepped up even further. We all can say that would be a goal. Giant air shelters, it doesn't require anything special. It can be built in a block way from using the foam glass. This is a relatively cheap and affordable material. Our summer residents buy it in stores and insulate their houses. There are also promising materials, for example, based on carbon nanotubes. The sheeting with a thickness of a sheet of paper will be able to withstand the pressure of 7 tons per square millimeter. But such super strength is not required. Boris Ustinovich, why are you taking up this topic right now? Because of this asteroid? Yes. I have been interested in this all my life. As a child, I was given a 1940 edition of the book The Life of the Earth, written by Professor Yakovlev, and it was about disasters. It was very interesting. How is it that the universe seems to so unshakable, and at any moment its end may happen? But we already know from the Holy Scriptures that the world will end. I also heard about this as a child, since I myself come from a Russian Orthodox Christian family. My Bryansk ancestors were the old believers, Fedoseevites. My great-grandfather copied church books, including the interpretation of the Apocalypse by Saint Andrew of Caesarea, which is highly revered among the old believers. That's the Russian dissident sect from the 18th century, and they had undergone a lot of persecutions. I talked about them in my other videos. Back to the professor. But I'm not talking to you about the end of the world, but about the very banal, usual end of physical existence. If God allows it, then this is possible. Finally, a purely technical question. You said that 10 million people could fit on your ark. How many arks do you need to build? Is humanity strong enough to save itself? Unfortunately, the helium reserves currently available, according to my calculations, could be enough for just a few dozen giant air shelters. You can build more balloons, but there is nothing to fill them with. In general, nomadic air cities would be useful to us, not only in case of natural disasters. Using them, we would improve the ecology of the Earth and at the same time work out the technology of the autonomous settlements on other planets. And we will have to fly there sooner or later anyway. By the way, I forgot to name the 10th threat, a supernova outbreak. It is in my table the most unlikely in the foreseeable future, but also the most inevitable. Our sun is not eternal, so God himself ordered us to strive for other stars. So that's what Professor Rodionov believed, worked for, and stated. You can agree with it, you cannot agree with this, it's all up to you, but his uncanny prediction of what our planet experienced in 2020 and the pandemic tells you something. Now let's talk about what NASA stated about the asteroid. It's almost the same, but why not? Asteroid 99942 Apophis is a near-Earth asteroid more than 1,000 feet, over 300 meters in size, that will harmlessly pass close to Earth on April 13, 2029. When it was discovered in 2004, the asteroid caused a stir because initial calculations indicated a small possibility it would impact Earth in 2029. I just want to take you for a moment your attention away. Not so long ago, NASA missed a few asteroids that were just about to hit Earth. I remember it. I even talked about it in some of my videos. So that we put NASA in its proper place. But let's continue. What else they say? After searching through some older astronomical images, scientists ruled out the possibility of 2029 impact. It's now predicted the asteroid will safely pass about 19,800 kilometers or 19,800 miles or 31,900 kilometers from our planet's surface. While that's a safe distance, it's close enough that the asteroid will come between Earth and our moon, which is about 238,855 miles or 384,400 kilometers away. It's also within the distance that some spacecraft orbit Earth. It is rare for an asteroid of this size to pass so close to Earth, although smaller asteroids in the range of 16 to 33 feet or 5 to 10 meters in size have been observed passing by similar distances. This Apophis close approach in 2029 will be an incredible opportunity to science. According to Marina Brazovich, a radar scientist at NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory in Pasadena, California, who works on radar observations of near-Earth objects, we will observe the asteroid with both optical and radar telescopes. With radar observations, we might be able to see surface details that are only a few meters inside. During its 2029 flyby, Apophis will first become visible to the naked eye in the night sky over the southern hemisphere and will look like a speck of light moving from east to west over Australia. It will be mid-morning on the US East Coast when Apophis is above Australia. Apophis will then cross above the Indian Ocean, and continuing west, it will cross the equator over Africa, and at its closest approach to Earth, just before 6 p.m. Eastern Daytime, I guess April 13, 2029, Apophis will be over the Atlantic Ocean. It will move so fast that it will cross the Atlantic in just an hour. By 7 p.m., the asteroid will have crossed over the United States. Of course, NASA is not speaking about 2036, but knowing NASA, that's not the only thing they're not speaking about. Well, when they're not busy missing asteroids coming close to Earth. So, to be honest, I kind of value late professors Rodionov's insight more. In the next video, which I hope to make soon, we will speak about his insights into the Tunguska phenomenon. I thank you for your support. Please subscribe to my channel. If you can support me, you'll find the links in the description to this video. Thank you.